Hey, everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Jake Isaacs. He's the co founder of Gathering the Kings, a mastermind community helping entrepreneurs win in business and in life. With over 2 decades in operations and leadership, he brings tactical clarity to the chaos of business growth and shares real world strategies for scaling companies, building efficient teams, and leading with empathy. I'm super excited because I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and figuring out how to grow their business is often the number one challenge that they face. So, with that, welcome, Jake. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Brett, thanks, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. You have a really cool background. You've done a lot of good things, and I think you have a ton of advice you're going to be able to offer and such. So, I have a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about. But can we start off with your personal story? I'm curious about your background and how you actually started your career.
Yeah. Um, I just kind of fell into it, Brett, to be 100% honest with you. As a young man, I was asked, do you want to be Steve Jobs or Paul Allen? And I had no idea who Paul Allen was when I was asked that question. So I did a little bit of research and I was like, oh my gosh, like there's a guy behind the guy who can still live a life of total anonymity and but still has all the influence and gets things done. I was like, that sounds right up my alley. I want to do that. And so I quickly just got a job helping grow a business. And then that turned into being an operator for a small local moving company for a couple of buddies of mine. And just slowly spiraled into where I was given more opportunity, more influence with bigger companies. And yeah, it's been an amazing ride.
That's very cool. So you actually started off in entrepreneurship, pretty much from the get-go. Was that something, did it run in your family, or what made you think, or I guess what interested you or had you gravitate toward that kind of thing versus, the typical corporate style job or, that kind of a lifestyle?
Yeah. My dad was a career salesman in the sporting goods industry, and I watched him work for some big manufacturers and saw the plight of those companies getting bought out or being sold and kind of what that did for his career. And then I saw him go to work as the number two for just a family owned rep agency and the influence that he was able to have on that small organization coming in and kind of helping be the number two there. And so just the example that he set in his career and working with that small family owned organization, it's just incredible to watch the influence and the fun that he was able to have in his career doing that.
It always fascinates me how much our parents or the people that are in our sort of circle as we, grow into adulthood have such an impact on the way we see the world, positively and negatively.
Yeah.
My father, interestingly, was a career, just corporate guy, right? He worked at one of the insurance companies. I live in Connecticut, so insurance is the big, one of the big industries, at least in the northern part of the state. And so he got a job there. And in the times that he got a job, it was still back in the day where you sort of got a job at one company and that's where you stayed. And you worked your whole career there. You got your watch, you got your cake, and all that other stuff at 25 years. And it was right around the time that everybody thought it was a great idea to start laying off all of the older workforce because you could bring in younger kids that could do the same kind of stuff. So the rules of the game changed in the middle. He got laid off literally while I was in college, and
Mm.
it marked me in a way because I became sort of disillusioned about the whole corporate America thing. I felt a little entrepreneurial, but I always had in the back of my mind that, even if I work somewhere, even if I like it, I got to be worried because you just never know when that's going to happen. So those formative experiences, I mean, for you in that particular case, you saw the positive element of it, and for me, I saw the fear of
Yeah.
or the illusion element of how a corporate job, most people think, hey, you get a job and it's secure. It's a lot more secure than running a business, but in reality, it's that security is an illusion because you just never know from day to day, especially nowadays, what's gonna happen and what's around the corner. So That is fascinating though. So I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and I know a lot of them feel really overwhelmed. There's too many things to do, there's too many decisions to make. And I know that, you've said that productivity isn't really about doing more, it's about clarity. It's about getting really clear on what you need to do. What does that mean for entrepreneurs and how can they actually use that to help them?
Yeah. Brett, it's been my experience in working with entrepreneurs and then also in my own personal life is that we mistake busyness for being productive and a full calendar, especially in this like virtual world that we live in with Zoom meetings and stuff like that. There's a lot of pride that people have in going back to back to back in meetings and they're just really, really busy. But just because you're busy doesn't mean that you're moving the needle in making decisions and growing your business or your organization. And so it's about being able to calm the noise, recognize, is this really serving me? Is this really serving my business? Is this something that I need to be investing time in? Or is this just busy work that I can, offload to a team member or I can outsource to a third party? Uh, is this really making a difference in the bottom line of my business this week?
Yeah, I definitely like and agree with that philosophy. I know I've had a brick and mortar business and then, digital after that. And any given day, it's very easy to stay busy wall to wall. Very
Yep,
easy.
very
But
easy.
if you're doing at the end of the day things that either are sometimes not useful at all, and sometimes they're things that are useful but should be done by somebody that you can outsource or delegate to in a way where you can focus on the core things you need to do to move the business forward. And I think part of the challenge with that is if you're so ingrained in what you're doing every day, sometimes it's difficult just to lift your head up enough to analyze and assess, like, are the things I'm doing? Because sometimes the things you're doing will be things that had value and meaning at one point, but they've outlived that usefulness. And yet, just out of
Right.
habit, out of routine, we keep doing it. And it's like until you can stop and you can start to look at your business from the outside in, um, it's one of the things that fascinates me about coaching entrepreneurs because there will be things that are so obvious to fix or to change in their business. And once you share that with them, they almost have the V8 moment where they smack themselves in the head and go, Of
Yeah.
course. But I don't blame them because when you're in that situation, it's difficult. You need that third party. You need that person who's not emotionally attached to what's going on to look at it, analyze it, and go, oh, okay, yeah, these things don't make a lot of sense. Let's flip this around and all that kind of stuff. So that makes that makes total sense. Um, Another thing, another problem that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs, and hands raised, I'm guilty of this myself, is letting the business literally take over your entire life. It absorbs every spare minute that isn't allocated somewhere else. How can an entrepreneur build a business that actually grows without having to sacrifice their family, their personal life, their health, all those other kinds of things?
Yeah, I love this question. It's easy to get caught up in that busyness that we were just talking about. It's easy to do the wall to wall like you're talking about. It's hard to be intentional with your time. And I think that's the one thing that most people don't understand can be the superpower in their life. You know, I heard once that your email inbox is someone else's priority of your time. And it, like other things inside of your business, you feel good about accomplishing them. That dopamine hit that you get from solving your team members' problems or by fixing a crisis that's happening with one of your vendors. All of these things are really good and positive, but they take you away, they distract you from the things that are important. And so what I coach people to do is to be intentional with your time. You know, what is the point of growing your business and growing your revenue and growing your influence if your kids can't stand the sight of you at home, or if you're, not present with your spouse about what's happening inside of their life, or if you have no tie to your community? You've got to make sure that you are blocking or prioritizing other aspects of your life to make you a whole person.
Yeah, and I fully agree. And I find that until I was intentional about it, the business will just absorb whatever else
100%.
you've got for
Yeah,
time. And
absolutely.
especially nowadays, right? We most of us have digital businesses, so we don't even leave the house to be able to do it. And the flip side of the beautiful aspect of how convenient it is there's no separation. When you
Yeah.
used to go into the office, when I had my brick and mortar business, when we shut the lights off and went home, that was it. Like there was nothing
Yeah.
else to do. I mean, worked their tail off during the day, and I was there later than I should have been a lot. But once I left, I left. And nowadays it's like you carry it with you all the time, and you have all these other things going on. So I think that intentionality is super important. What would you say to somebody who says, okay, I get that, and I see how important it is, and I really want to be able to value like doing this or doing that, but I how can I do that if my business isn't like crushing it, and I'm not making so much money that I can hire a bunch of people to do everything? How do I still do that without risking losing my business or it not working?
Yeah, I think that it's taking the time to really sit down and evaluate why you're doing what you're doing. Most people get started and they just throw their boat in the river and are taken wherever the current is going, as opposed to being in control of the rudder and making sure that they are directing where they want to go. And you've got to know why you're doing the things that you're doing so that you can prioritize them in your schedule. you know I've met some agency owners that are totally satisfied with three or $400,000 a year in revenue because they're making 75% of it. They don't need to be $1 million business because they understand that I'm building this for my family, I'm building this for time, I'm okay with the size of the business where it is because it has gotten me to the the thing that I want, which is to be able to be present for all of my kids' baseball games, or to be able to serve at church every Wednesday night, or to be able to be a part of my girls' Girl Scout troop. And if you don't know why you're doing the things that you're doing, it's easy to let the business absorb everything because it's all consuming. The problems are never going to go away, Brett. They're always going to be something that you can invest your energy into.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point, right? Sometimes you climb the ladder and you continue to climb the ladder because the ladder's in front of you without stopping to reflect as to whether or not you need to go any higher, whether it makes any sense. I mean, you know, there's a quote that I love from and I date myself a little bit, but from the original Wall Street, where Bud Fox says to Gordon Gekko, how many yachts can you ski behind? Like you get to a
Right.
certain point where you're like, are you doing this just because it's like a game, or are you doing it because an intentional end that you had in mind, or outcome, or result, or lifestyle, and now you've got it, and maybe you don't need to keep going, as like keep building. Maybe you're okay with now balancing your life a little bit more. And to that end, I mean, I'm assuming I'd be curious to know your take on this as well. Obviously every business is going to have either its seasonality or it's going to have some element of it where there are times where you need to just put your head down and kind of go. I'm assuming that that's okay as long as then you're able to detach from it after, and it's short term and temporary. Is that how you see that, or you have a different way of looking at that?
Yeah. And how well are we communicating with the people that matter to us the most about that sprint? You know, like, hey, daddy's going through a really tough season at work right now. It's probably going to require that I'm going to miss a couple of your Saturday morning games. But, at the end of this, we're expecting X, Y, and Z. And are you communicating that stuff with your spouse and with your children so that they're a part of the entire process, so they understand what's happening? I think so often, I'm going to speak to men, but so often as men, we try to keep things close to the vest because we're the protector and we're the provider. But really, what we do in those situations is we're pushing everyone else away because you know why you're doing it. You know what's ahead of you, but you haven't shared that with anyone else. And so now you've inadvertently created distance between you and the people that matter the most because you're unwilling to communicate about what's happening.
I actually love that. I think it's a super powerful point. It's very easy to take that for granted. I know for years, my wife got it. Like she understood why it was what it was. But I was sort of fortunate in that way because I didn't really articulate it, and I didn't um even with my kids. I mean, the reason I started my business was so I could be more present in their lives. I didn't want to work where I was traveling all the time and doing things where I didn't have control, only to
Yeah.
find, oh, I built this great lifestyle for my family that I'm not there to enjoy. Then when I'm ready to spend time with my kids, they're up and out. you know um you have those times to spend with them, and then they're going to do their own thing. And so and I think I did a good job of that in some regards because I was there a lot, but there were times where I wasn't as present, even though I was physically there. And there were times where I was cramming, staying up too late. So I couldn't be emotionally available for anybody else because I didn't have anything left in the tank for me. And
Yeah.
I think just the fact that you can share that messaging so everybody's in it together and they understand it alleviates the pressure, because I felt all this pressure at the same time, like, oh, I'm not being a good dad, I'm not being a good spouse. And you could sort of pop that balloon if you just bring them into the fold and say, hey, listen, this is where we are, this is going to pass, but we got to work through this, and I just need you to be understanding of it. And it has nothing to do with the way that I feel about you or anything else. In fact, the opposite. Right, I'm doing this for us, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish I could sit here and tell you, Brett, that I've done this really well in my life, but I haven't. Right. In fact, it cost me a marriage because I was so busy working, providing for the family, but I didn't communicate about what was happening at work well to the house. And so, as a result, my wife felt abandoned. She felt left behind. And my motivation for getting up and going to work every single day was for her, but we were just misaligned with our communication around that.
Yeah, and you could see how that would happen. Absolutely, but that's also where we learn those lessons. I mean, sometimes the hard way,
Yeah.
sometimes through a result we're not happy about. But I've learned plenty of difficult lessons that mistakes I won't make again because I got smacked in the forehead with it, and I'm like, okay, yeah, don't do it that way again. You do learn that way. It's easy because I think of it almost, entrepreneurs are almost like kids in the sense that you tell your kids 100 times, like, don't touch the hot stove, don't touch the hot, that's going to burn. And until they touch the hot stove, they just they're going to do it anyway. And I think that some of the things and some of the mistakes or some of the trials we go through are sort of necessary for the growth. Not that I wish them on anybody, but at the same time, I think that's the only way to look at it in a healthy way, so you can then grow from that and get better at who you are and what you do. I think that's essential for anybody going through this kind of journey. So sales and revenue are generally considered the most important focus, right? If we just break it down, talk to any business owner, what they're going to be looking at is how much are we selling, how much is the revenue, maybe profit, but all those financial kinds of things. And for good reason. Obviously, you need that to keep your business going, but they don't always tell the whole story. Is there a flaw in that thinking of being totally focused on that? And where do you think that most entrepreneurs go wrong operationally?
Yeah. It's funny. My business partner is the sales mind of the partnership. And his answer to every problem is, well, we need more leads, we need more sales. And I'm the operations guy in the partnership. And my response is, oh, we need a better system. We need a more dialed in process. Right. And I think that it's important to have both. The reality of the situation is you need to have leads and you need to have sales because that's what keeps the lights on. That's what keeps the people employed. But if all we're doing is measuring money, right, without any other type of metrics, then we're just losing sight because it's easy to make money. It's easy to lose money, right? You need to be able to zoom out enough and have an understanding of, again, I'm going to go back to the way we started this conversation. What's actually moving the needle for me and my business right now? And do I need to be worried about my customer acquisition cost this month because I'm hyper focused on a new promotion that we're doing. And so being able to understand, there's realistically 5 to 7 numbers that every business owner should be looking at or measuring on a weekly basis. Top line and bottom line revenue is just one of those.
Yeah, and I think it's easy for that to be the focus, but it's also important to understand and recognize other things. I've worked in organizations in the past too, where everything was numbers driven, and while I
Yeah.
understood that on one level, they completely were misaligned with the human element of what was going on. And when you're not a solopreneur, when you work with other people are human beings, right? They have feelings, they have emotions, they assess whether or not they feel valued. All of these kinds of things matter. And if everything is numbers driven and everything is just about bottom and top lines, the problem is you lose sight of your greatest asset, which are the people who can help make things go. When people feel rewarded, when they feel valued, they tend to, do a better job at what they're doing. They tend to take more pride in it. They want to do right by you because they feel you've done right by them. And the reverse is true. If you have to be there present every minute of every day to make sure people aren't screwing around when you're not there, you're not running a very good organization because people shouldn't feel that way. But unfortunately, in a lot of businesses that I've been exposed to or seen, you see that a lot, and it's unfortunate. Um, this actually segues perfectly because I was just going to ask you about your leadership style. I know for you, leading teams, two of the things that you focus on a lot are empathy and precision. So, what does that actually look like? If I'm running my business and I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do it in the right way where I'm showing everybody I care and all that other stuff, how can I do that, or what does that manifest like?
It manifests exactly the way you were talking about it. It's showing up and having conversations with people to let them know that you care. It's listening to the response that you're getting from your team members. It's knowing about their goals, about their dreams. One of the phrases that I use when I hire people is, I understand that if you won the lottery tomorrow, you probably wouldn't show up here. And that's totally good. How can we use this opportunity as a vehicle to help get you what you want in life? And you have to have an understanding of what that want is. Are we working to save money so we can go back to school? Do we have a young family and we're trying to provide diapers and formula and things like that? Having an understanding of what the motivation is for each individual employee, and then being able to speak to that, be able to train to that, be able to use that as motivation for corrective conversations for poor results. All of that stuff is important. The reality is you care about the top line as the business owner. No one else in your organization cares about it. And so it may be important for you to track, and it might be your metrics for how things are doing, but your employees don't care. As much as you want them to care, they don't care because at the end of the day, they're not seeing the result of that. So, how are you creating an environment where people feel seen, they feel respected, they feel taken care of? And that requires an investment of time with people, regardless of whether you're working in a digital environment and your employee, your workforce is remote or you're in person. It requires time to build those relationships with people, which means you can't be back to back or wall to wall in meetings. You've got to go walk the floor. You've got to have regular one-on-ones, and you've got to be able to talk about things outside of work because those things matter to people. If all you're doing is talking about the numbers and the metrics and talking about what's next, people can go get jobs anywhere. Everyone is hiring, right? They stay with you for a reason. They stay with you because how you make them feel, whether they feel like they're being taken care of or they're safe inside of your organization. I've been very fortunate to have people literally pick up and move across the country to continue to work for me in different opportunities that I've had. That's a huge responsibility. And I recognize that it's also not very common. Most people hate their job and hate their boss.
Absolutely. No, that's terrific. And it obviously speaks to the kind of culture and environment that you build. And I think that's super important. funny story that's sort of aligned with this, but it's flipped. So I was in a sales role years back, early in my career, and the sales manager was visiting. He would go around to the offices and he'd go on your appointments with you. So we went to one of the appointments, and I walked in the office, and I'm a Red Sox fan, and this woman had Mets paraphernalia up. And I said, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to work with you, Lori. You're a Mets fan. Like I'm a Sox fan. This is never going to work." So we had
Right.
some laughs, talked a little bit about her kids. She had some stuff up, and then in the last few minutes, like we talked a little bit about staffing and stuff that we were going to do. So we get out, we're walking back to the car, and my boss turns to me and he goes, "Dude, you got to cut the small talk. People don't give a crap about that." He's like, "We're there to go in, sell, like do this." And I'm thinking to myself, that was the moment I knew that wasn't the right fit for me. Because
Yeah.
if you're in a sales role, it's all about relationships and building that. She is getting called by 10 staffing agencies a day. The reason she has me over to her office is because it gives her an escape from what she's doing and an opportunity to talk about her family and her hobbies and stuff like that for a few minutes. That's the stuff people remember, not how many widgets you sold them, you
Right.
know? And I was just like, wow, like, like I knew from that literal moment, okay, this isn't the right fit for me. And I knew
100%.
like he didn't care about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's exactly what you're talking about. So you've worked across multiple industries, 20 plus years. What are some universal operations lessons that apply or mistakes you've seen and ways to correct them?
Yeah. Staying in this vein of leadership, one of the things that I've realized, Brett, is if you're going to be a people manager, in order to be a good people manager, you just have to put in the reps. I don't care what the industry is, what the widget is that you're selling. Um, Having tough conversations, you can only learn how to do that by having tough conversations. It doesn't matter how many podcasts you listen to, or how many books that you read, or how many seminars you attend, until you are in the heat of the moment having a conversation about someone's performance and you say the wrong thing and reflect back on it like, oh, I should not have said that. I didn't handle that appropriately, you know. And so a lot of times we will intentionally put young managers in situations where they have to confront people, not because we're looking to build a culture of decisiveness, but because we would much rather those confrontations happen over the small things than and those conversations not go well, and that manager be able to learn and experience and grow through that, then when it matters, when the chips are on the table. So I think the other thing operationally that most people underestimate is the importance of writing down your processes. Especially for new businesses that are getting started, most things live inside of the owner's head. And they decide that they're getting in business and, I want to exit in 5 years. Well, the reality is no one's going to buy you for not buy the ideas that are in your head unless you have it written down and documented and you've got a process that other people can duplicate. You're not exiting anything. It doesn't matter how great of a operator you are. And so you've got to have processes written, you've got to have systems in place, and you've got to be able to communicate that in a clear and easy to understand way for other people to follow.
Yeah, I think both of those things are fantastic advice. It's funny because the way that you sort of phrase that is very similar to what I've said to people in that if you ever want to exit this business, right, you have to step back from it and look at it as though you were an investor. Would you invest in your business if you don't have systems in place, if you don't have
Right.
processes in place that are replicatable when you're on vacation, when you're not there anymore, then you don't have anything valuable enough to sell. Because at the
Right.
end of the day, if the minute you stop working there, it doesn't do what it's going to do. Nobody wants that. Nobody's going to spend money on that. And I think that's so true. And I don't think people do it deliberately. I think what happens is you're so busy and you're doing your stuff as an entrepreneur and you're sort of iterating and figuring out as you go, that part of it is you don't know the process right away. And then once eventually you develop it, you don't take the time to stop and document stuff because once again, you're busy and you're doing it. But to your point, then it's all up here and that isn't valuable to anybody other than you. And God forbid something happened to you, there's nobody else who could do it.
Yeah.
So that's and your point about the way that you treat people and having those conversations, I agree wholeheartedly also about the fact that look, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with getting coaching about this or having a paradigm for that but until you're sitting across the table from somebody who you have to say, hey, you're not meeting your goals, it isn't going well, there isn't any way you can read as much as you want about that, but you can't predict what their reaction's going to be. And so you've got to just do the reps so you get to a place where you're comfortable with it and you understand. And I think the big thing there is if you honestly go into that situation with the attitude that this is a win-win, you're not there to scold somebody. You're
Right.
there to help everybody. You want them to be able to meet their goals and their requirements, and you want the company to do the same, right? And so if that's the attitude you have, I think it makes it a little bit less scary because your heart is in the right place and you're coming at it from the right place. If it doesn't work out, maybe it's not the right fit for them either, but at least then you could sort of help them transition into something else. And at least you're on the same page about it. You also will get their respect because you were honest with them and you were forthcoming about the way that you felt, um, despite the fact that they might be emotional in the moment. So I
Yeah.
think yeah, go ahead.
It goes back to what we were talking about before. You have to understand what motivates people, right? It's that empathy aspect. And if you understand what they're showing up for every single day, it makes those conversations a lot easier. Because now it's no longer, I need you to perform because it affects my bottom line. It's, I need you to perform because I actually care about you. And I understand that you're doing this for your college tuition. And I want to continue to help you with that.
Yeah, exactly. Once you align the values, then it makes total sense. So let's talk a minute about community because look, this is one of my big mistakes, and this is one of the things that I messed up when I got into digital marketing. I basically was a lone wolf. I said, you know what? I mean, I have outsourcers and stuff, and I have colleagues in the business that are all over the world. We only get together once, twice a year at conferences, but I never spent the time to invest enough in those relationships to really build around that. I always believed that rolling up the sleeves and getting stuff done was the way you get stuff done. As I got older and matured a little and made a lot of mistakes and struggled with stuff I didn't need to because somebody had the answer, I just didn't connect with them. I realized I had it all backward. I should have built the relationships, and that would have made the entire process a lot more fun, a lot less lonely, a lot less isolating. So, for community elements for entrepreneurs, what is the difference for somebody between building a community? What's the importance of it? And what is the difference in terms of the way that their journey is going to be if they try to go it alone versus build a community around what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, the reality of the situation, to be a business owner, you have to be radical. And most people in your life or in the business owner's life can't relate to the level of radicalness that they're operating. You know, it is a very surreal feeling knowing that if you don't close this deal, you're not sure if 5 families are going to be able to eat next week. Like, that's a level of pressure that you just don't get in a 9 to 5, showing up and punching a clock. And so most people inside of an entrepreneur's life cannot relate to that level of pressure, cannot relate to that level of stress. And so what we have found is when developing communities for entrepreneurs, it's this ability to walk into a room, game recognizing game. Like, I might not do what you do, but I understand what you've had to do in order to be successful because I've had to do it as well. And I appreciate that about you. And so there's a bond and a kindredness between the two of us because we've had to overcome the same things. And unfortunately, again, going back to, that male machismo, we're just not putting ourselves in areas where we're vulnerable enough. Our go-to for men is give me more pressure. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to get quieter. I'm going to go bury myself in order to be successful. And that has a very short runway, right? Stress, anxiety, mental health, as entrepreneurs, you know, 1 in 4 entrepreneurs are dealing with some type of mental health issue. And so you've got to be able to walk into a room, be seen, and have people around you that respect you for what you've been able to do, where you can have just real conversations about the pressures that it takes to succeed.
Yeah, it's great to hear you say that because I say all the time, your wife or your spouse or your husband or whatever can love you, your family can love you. If they aren't their own entrepreneurs doing their own thing, or they're not in the situation rowing the boat with you, they don't understand. They love you, they
Yeah.
support you. There are things about your business that drive them nuts, trust me. And there's no way they understand the pressure that you deal with on a daily basis. And having other people that literally, like you said, it might be a totally different industry, but if they've walked that same walk, we have commonality. We
Yeah.
all know. And the funny thing is, I've interviewed well over 100, business owners of all different levels, right? Even the people that are the most wildly successful externally, when you talk to them, they talk about the fear that it's not going to last, the ups and downs with business. They talk about, the struggles, because those are the things that forge you. And when you go through that, you're always going to remember those. Those are those moments that, when you have those turning points, or you have those dark things that you've got to sort of work through. But everybody, no matter how far removed they are from that situation now, can still remember in a palpable way what that struggle feels like. And I think that speaks volumes for anybody who hasn't dipped their toe in the entrepreneurial waters to figure out, like, hey, it could be the greatest thing in the world, but make no mistake about it, it's not for the weak, it's not for the faint of heart. Right? I mean, it's just not.
Yeah. There's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And this is what we're doing with our lives. If you're in business for the long haul, you're doing this for years and years and years. And so being intentional, again, harkering back to what we talked about at the very beginning, about everything in your life is extremely important, including who you're spending time with. You know, the beer league softball teams are great. But again, that's not a release for most business owners. It's just another thing to fill your calendar. You're not actually getting any fellowship in that environment.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And speaking of which, you built Gathering the Kings, right? As a mastermind for high performing entrepreneurs. So what makes that a true mastermind group from just a group of business owners that get together?
Yeah. The number one book on success is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And it's in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich that the word mastermind first came into the zeitgeist of our culture. And the definition that Napoleon set out in that book is where two or more minds are in community and harmony, amazing things can happen. And so when we set out to build Gathering the Kings, we wanted it to be a true mastermind. A lot of mastermind programs out there in the marketplace are actually just group coaching programs. And those are incredible. Everyone needs a coach. I think very highly of all of those things. But a true mastermind is where people can come regardless of the industry, regardless of the widget, and talk to each other about things that are happening inside of their lives and inside of their businesses. Some of the coolest conversations that I've been a part of are, a garage door owner is talking to a financial advisor, and the financial advisor is talking about a new marketing funnel, and you can see the light bulb going off inside of that garage door owner's head that they may have never tried that before, but it can directly apply to their industry. And just in having a conversation with each other around the betterment of everyone's life, they get to unlock these really cool things.
Yeah, I think, and I can speak from personal experience in the sense that when I've gone to the few events I've gone to, and I had an opportunity to actually sit down with guys that do, essentially what I do. I mean, we all have our differences, but it was always not in the conferences or the conference rooms where the value was. I mean, there's great content,
Right.
but the value was in the hallway. The value was at happy hour. The value was in, you know, uh, late night, right at dinner or whatever else, where everybody's hanging out and they're talking about what's going on in their businesses, and they're talking, and people would strike up partnerships and deals and joint ventures and stuff like that. But even beyond that, just being there to absorb the information in the room can be fascinating, even if you're not actively taking part in all of it at the moment, because it gives you a sense of community. It gives you a sense of understanding, hey, there are other people that know like what I'm going through, and they also are struggling with similar problems that I had or maybe have now. And so there's a lot of value in all of those kinds of things. So if a business owner that's listening, right, is stuck right now, feeling overwhelmed, what should they do to start making changes to get to a better place?
I would say take a real hard look at your calendar. And that's the very first thing. Your calendar reflects what you value. And so if you say that you value your family, but there's no family time on your calendar, do you really value your family? If you're feeling stuck, evaluate what you're spending your time on. Are you constantly in meetings with other people that you don't need to be in? Get out of it. Do something different, right? Make sure that your calendar reflects what's truly important to you, what truly moves the needle inside of your business. And I know that that sounds super simple, Brett, and it's like, okay, whatever. But I'll tell you, it's a fact, man. I mean, if being healthy is important to you, but you're not carving out time every single day to go to the gym, then it's not really that important to you. And so you've got to be accountable to the schedule that you're allowing yourself to participate in. You've got to make sure that the things that matter the most, the things that are moving the needle inside of your life, not just your business, are reflected appropriately by the time on your calendar. That's going to get you unstuck, right? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results, we all know that's the definition of insanity. But most business owners show up every single day just willing to react to that day's fire. And unfortunately, being a firefighter doesn't grow the business. It doesn't grow the influence. It doesn't, create an opportunity to spend more time at home.
Yeah, totally true. I mean, if you're always in management mode and go mode just to keep the legs paddling to keep it going, it's very hard to grow or do anything strategic. You also miss out on opportunities because your head is down instead of up. So when stuff is going on, they blow right by and you say, "Oh geez, somebody must have been lucky to get that opportunity." But,
Right.
you could have had it if you were able to see it. So, yeah, fully agree. I know it sounds simple, but it is disarmingly powerful to just be intentional about your time and also be ruthlessly committed to it. Like if people try to interrupt you, unless it is something that literally is an emergency that you have to handle, hey, listen, we could talk about this after. These are the way the blocks of time work. I need you to come see me at 3 o'clock or whatever it is, and
Yep.
stay disciplined and focused to what you're doing. You'll find that everyone around you will adjust to it and start to figure out that, oh, I can't bother him during this time. He's not kidding.
Yeah.
So
No, 100%. You've got to hold to your own standard.
yeah, I like that. All right. So where can people find you, find your products, find your services, connect with you?
Oh, I appreciate that, Brett. Thank you. First of all,
Absolutely.
if you've made it this far in the podcast, I just want to congratulate you. The fact that you're willing to invest time in yourself by learning, by listening to a great show like Brett hosts, it's commendable. And so, do him a favor and like the post, subscribe to the channel. That is going to help him continue to be able to grow and reach more people. And if this is important for your self development, help other people make it important for them. As far as reaching out to Gathering the Kings, we can be found on the social media platforms at Gathering the Kings or at Jake Isaacs. And then our website, familymastermind.com, is the place where you can learn the most about our organization.
Perfect. Thanks for that. All right. I have one last question I got to ask because I'm dying to know what your perspective is. And that's, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Number one tip for success. Well, I will tell you, a coach of mine told me once, Brett, that for 98% of people in the world, success is just merely a good idea. And so my number one tip for success is be in the 2%. Be obsessed with success and understand that success is not an overnight microwavable event, that it is going to take consistency over a long period of time. And if you can win the war of attrition, you will be successful.
It's great advice. Perfect. Thanks. All right. With that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Jake, so much for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit gatheringthekings.com for a mastermind community specifically designed to help high-performing entrepreneurs gain technical clarity for business growth, build efficient teams, and create more margin and purpose in their lives. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise, optYOUmize.